Today we're going to talk about basics of using Adobe Illustrator. Before we get started, how many people in here have already used Illustrator before? 1, 2.5. Okay, 2.5 people. Not a problem. Again, if you've never opened up Illustrator, you've never seen Illustrator, you don't know anything about Illustrator, you're in the right place. It's not a problem. There was no prerequisite for you to have known anything about Illustrator before this class. So we're going to walk you through this. Now, for those of you who have used Illustrator in the past, some of the stuff we're going to go over is probably going to be a bit of a review. But just stick with me because there may be a few things that we talk about tonight that you don't know. Now, to get us started, Adobe Illustrator, what is it? Illustrator is Adobe's vector-based drawing program. And the word vector is a pretty important one. And I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to put up some notes here just so we have something to look at while we have the video. So, all right, so Illustrator is a vector-based program. But here's the question, what does vector mean? Any thoughts? This isn't a math class, so if you're thinking math, that's not it.
Like scales infinitely?
Yes, scales infinitely is a good way of putting it. I said it is a math class, in so fact that when I'm talking about vector, I'm not talking about like trigonometry, but in essence, a vector-based drawing program really is math-based. So there are two different kinds of programs when it comes to drawing and image creation. Vector-based is what Illustrator uses. The other one is called raster-based. Does anybody know a program that is a raster-based program? I'll give you a hint. It's another Adobe program. Photoshop. Photoshop is a raster-based, or what we would call pixel-based. So the difference between the two is that if you are editing photos in Photoshop, those are pixel-based images, meaning that whatever the resolution, whatever the size that you captured that original image, like let's say with your phone, right? That is the maximum size that image could ever be. If you try to enlarge that image beyond that size, you may have seen this happen to you in the past, the image starts to get blurry, you lose quality, you start getting artifacting, and it looks really, really, really bad. Vector-based graphics, on the other hand, use mathematics to actually calculate the overall illustration. So I could take a small illustration of a little character that I've designed, and let's say I accidentally designed it to be like 1 inch by 1 inch in size. Well, if it's vector-based, it's math-based. So I can actually take that and I can blow that up to the size of a billboard and not lose any quality. It'll look the same. So when you are designing in Illustrator, you're designing vector-based graphics. It's basically a math-based drawing program. Now, of course, you don't need to know anything in math to actually use it, but that's how it actually works. So before we get started, let's talk about how to actually download this. Now, each and every one of you, let me turn this off, this thing is starting to bug me. Each and every one of you, because you have a login with TCC and you're in this class, you have access to Adobe Creative Cloud. Not just here on campus, but also at home. All you have to do to be able to get Illustrator at home is just go to adobe.com, log in, and you're able to download something called the Creative Cloud Installer. And when you go and you log in, so I'm going to log in here for me. Now where I went on this computer up here at the top, see this little squiggly line icon right here? That's the Creative Cloud logo. So if I click on that, notice it's grayed out. I'm not logged in. So I'm going to log myself in using my TCC account. I'm going to log myself in using my TCC account. Come on, there we go. We are. Of course, it's probably, yep, it's going to send me a notification. So I'm going to do my normal, two-factor authentication, go through the whole login process. Once that's been approved, everything is good to go, what you're going to see from the Creative Cloud installer is you're going to see this dashboard. It's going to sign me into the Creative Cloud, and this is what I'm going to see. You have access to every single application that Adobe creates simply by being a student here at CCC. Now, we're going to talk a little bit more about some of the details and some of the nice features of the Creative Cloud dashboard a little bit later on. But the areas that you really need to focus on right now is going to be this toolbar on the left-hand side, and specifically this one that says Apps. So when you are at home, do we have any Windows users here? Just out of curiosity. About half the class. Okay, great. Everybody else Mac-based? We don't have any Linux people in here, do we? No? Okay, that's fine. So as long as you have a Windows machine or you have a Mac, you're fine. So once you are logged into Creative Cloud, just go to the applications, and you're going to want to find Illustrator. So when you look for Illustrator, mine says open because it's already installed, but obviously when you do this at home, it's going to say install. So click on that, it'll install Illustrator, and you're good to go. You'll have access to everything that we're going to be doing in this class. Now, as far as which version of Illustrator, you'll notice this one says version 30, and then this one's over here is 29.4. Go ahead and install the latest version of Illustrator. Any questions about how to install it? Yes? It's more than likely it's already installed on all the computers. It should be, yeah. So I wouldn't worry about that. I'm just trying to show you where to go. So yeah, not a problem. Yeah, the big thing is that, and I will probably add the link to the Adobe downloader. So when you're here in Adobe and you sign in with Adobe, oh, it's gonna make me sign in again. Stop it. You gotta love this. It never remembers me.
Never remembers anyone.
Yeah.
I always have the same problems.
Oh, there we go. All right. So once you actually log in here to Adobe, you can actually go to desktop apps, or you can download things, and you're good to go, right? So you'll have access to everything here in the browser. You can download the app, then you can log into the dashboard and install it on your computer. Doesn't matter, Windows or Mac. Now, unless you have a very, very, very old operating system. Like if your operating system is like 7 or 8 years old, you may have a problem. Does anybody have a computer that old? Just out of curiosity. Every now and then somebody may, so just curious.
Mine's kind of old, but I don't know how old.
Do you have a newer operating system on it though? But you're running Windows, right?
Yeah.
Which version of Windows? 10?
I wish.
7?
I don't. It's supposed to have 10, but I don't think it's active.
Okay. If it's like at least 7, you should be okay. So shouldn't be too much of a problem.
Honestly, I have no idea.
Oh, either way, it should work. If you're having a problem with it though, let me know and I'll take a look at it. Okay. So that's all you need to know about Adobe. Just log in, download it, get Adobe installed on your computer. That way you're going to be good to go. Now, a couple of things about moving files back and forth between home and here on campus. And this will become a little bit more of, not a problem, but a little bit more of a concern when we start talking about InDesign, which is another Adobe application later in the semester. Adobe Illustrator is pretty good as far as being backwards compatible, meaning that you can, let's say we have the latest version of Illustrator here, and let's say back home your computer can only install like an older version of Illustrator for whatever reason. You can still work on your file here in the classroom, take that file, go back home, and it will still open up on that older version of Illustrator. And vice versa. You could do something at home, come up here, and it will still open up. When we start talking about InDesign, that's when things get a little trickier, because InDesign does not like working between different versions. Okay. When we get to InDesign, I'll explain what we need to do to make sure that all your files are compatible, regardless of your operating system, regardless of your individual version number for InDesign. But for Illustrator, you shouldn't have any problems. Okay. Usually get asked that, and I just want to make sure I address that. All right, any questions? Okay. Now, let's go ahead and open up Illustrator. So on your computer, you can find that in the applications folder. So a couple different ways you can do this. On the Mac, you can click on the Macintosh hard drive icon here, and that will open up this little window. And you should, in the left-hand side, have something called Applications. And in here, you should have Adobe Illustrator. I actually have the older version 25 and the newer version 26. That's fine. I'm going to use 26 today. Or it may be down here in the dock. Illustrator is this little orange icon with an A and an I. Or you may have something called the Launchpad, which looks like this. It's like a little icon, little tic-tac-toe icon down in the dock. And from here, you can usually find Illustrator in this Launchpad here. So either way, find it, click on it, open up Illustrator, please. If anybody has any problems finding it, let me know. We doing good, okay? I mean, we doing good so far? I need more coffee today. That's the problem. All right. Good. Now, when you open up Illustrator, you are going to get this screen here. From here, you have a couple different options, but there is one area that I want to point out before we actually start creating anything. Inside of every Adobe application, there is a section that is called Learn. So if you want to take a look at this window, on my left-hand side, my left column over here, does everybody see the little light bulb that says Learn? Go ahead and click on that. Now, every one of these apps has a section called Learn. The purpose of that is to give you quick little tutorials that many of them will actually run in the app with you. In other words, if you click on some of these tutorials, they'll actually have like little tooltips that pop and say, okay, now I need you to click this button. Okay, now I need you to come over here and open up this. Or now I need you to go to this menu item. And it actually will kind of walk you through, and you can create whatever it is that you want. Some of these others are going to be tutorials that you will find online. And they're like video tutorials, or some of them are written tutorials. In fact, one of the things that I did in Canvas is that down here in the lesson 2, I've actually linked to Adobe's webpage that has a lot of these tutorials listed as well. So I just want to point this out because this is one of those areas that if you want to kind of do a deeper dive into these applications, you want to learn a little bit more, because there are many of our students who will get into this and really enjoy doing illustration work and love using this app and want to go deeper into this app. And sometimes they want to move a lot faster than we can really realistically do inside of class. The Learn tab is a really good place to jump in there and kind of learn a little bit more. So kind of think of that as like your little breadcrumbs. If you want to follow that trail, go down a couple rabbit holes. The Learn tab is definitely a good area to go ahead and do that. All right, so I'm going to go back to the Home section here. So I got Learn and I got Home. And from here, I want to go ahead and create a new file. Now, I could do that a couple different ways. There is a giant blue button over here that says New File. Could do that. There are a set of presets down here, and these are some of the more commonly selected presets according to Adobe. So things like a letter size page, a postcard size page. This is more for web design, and this is for video work. And yes, you can use Illustrator for all of those things. It's not just print-based work that you can use this for. You can use it also for multimedia work, animation work, and video work. In fact, in the animation class, one of the things that we talk about is motion graphic work. And when you're doing with motion graphics, all motion graphics pretty much start out as an Illustrator file. So you can start with that here. Now, if you'll notice, there is a bit of an issue here. Does anybody see something weird about this? It says letter size. Is there anything weird about that? It's what? Odd numbers. So when I say a letter size page, and I'm going to hold this up, right? Can we agree? This is a letter size page, right? Letter size sheet of paper. When I say that, does anybody know what the actual size is of a letter-sized sheet of paper? Close. 11 is definitely one of the dimensions, so this is 11 inches. But what's that? 8.5. Yeah. 8.5 by 11 is considered a letter-sized page. Okay? Now, throughout this entire class, I am going to basically describe different page sizes by either their name or their size, their dimensions. Okay? So I'll say, create a letter-sized document. And hopefully by the end of the semester, you'll know that's 8.5 by 11. However, as was just mentioned, take a look at these very weird numbers that we have here. Does anybody know what that is? Or what type of numbers those are? What unit is being measured? It's what? Yeah, points. So when I say that this is 8.5 by 11, what do I mean by 8.5 by 11? 8.5 by 11 what? Inches, right? Now, are we all familiar? Did anybody here grow up in Europe and just use metric the entire time and you don't know anything about imperial?
East Africa.
East Africa? But you're familiar with imperial system, right? Not just metric.
Correct.
Good. Okay, so I can go either way, that's fine. But typically when we talk about 8.5 by 11, we're talking about inches. We're not talking about millimeters or centimeters, right? We're talking about inches. Now, in the world of print, one of the things that you're going to start to get used to is that we also use additional units of measurement. We don't just measure everything in inches, right? Because imagine for a moment, if you're trying to measure something really small, inches is not very precise. Can we agree? It's not a good way to measure something that's small. Now, if I'm trying to measure something, like the size of a piece of paper, yeah, inches is fine, right? Additionally, what if I were to try to measure something very, very, very large, like the size of this room? I could use inches, but what unit would I use instead? Feet. So are we familiar with these kind of units, right? Inches, feet are longer, right? Difference between like a millimeter and a centimeter and a meter, same kind of idea in the metric. Well, in the world of print, we have other units that we're going to be talking about. Specifically, we're going to be discussing points and another system called picas. So, put these in our notes here. Units of measurement for print. Oh, yep, if I can, there we go. So, yes, we are going to talk about inches, but we're also going to talk about points and something oddly called picas. Okay? Those are going to be the 3 units of measurement that we're going to be talking about. Now, in the case of the presets down there, you'll note that mine are currently set up as points. Yours may not be, by the way. When you first opened up Illustrator, yours may not actually show points. That's what that little PT stands for. So in the world of abbreviations, right? IN, inches, points are PT, and picas are actually just the letter P, and I'll talk a little bit more about picas later on. Okay, so those are the abbreviations. The reason why mine is in points in this particular case, a lot of times it's because it was the last preset that I used. But there are other units that we can use. Notice the web preset and the HD preset are not actual points at all. They're actual pixels. You see that? We're not going to work in pixels in this class. See the PX? Pixels are for things like animation, web design, things like that. We're not going to be working in pixels here. So we're going to be working in inches, points, and picas. Those are the 3 units of measurements that we'll be talking about. All right. Any questions before we move on? All right. So 2 of the ways. I can click New File. I click on one of these presets, and then, of course, I can go up to File and click on New. One of those. So in my case, I'm going to click on the blue button. It says New File. So go ahead and click on that, and we'll come over here. Now, in my case, you'll see that I have a new window when I said a new file. So what Illustrator is going to want to know from us is, okay, what size do you want to start with? What is the size of the document that you want to create? Now, in addition to the little popular presets that are down at the bottom, Look at all these tabs up here at the top. I have the most recent sizes that I've used. I have a mobile set of presets, web, print, branding, social. Anybody here do social media? Nobody on here is on any social media. I don't believe you. Okay, several of you. All right, how many people here have Instagram? How many people have TikTok? How many people have Twitter or X or whatever Elon Musk is calling it this week? Nobody. Facebook. More people have Facebook than X. That's interesting. Okay. All right, cool. Anyone still rocking a MySpace page? No. Sorry. All right, so here's the thing. You could go in here and with social media presets, look at this. I can create, like, oh, Pinterest. I forgot about Pinterest. How can I forget about Pinterest? I'm sorry. For you Pinterest people, I'm sorry. I forgot about Pinterest. What is that?
Yeah, I've never heard of that.
Never heard of Pinterest?
No, no.
I don't know if we have time to go down the rabbit hole of Pinterest tonight, but you could certainly look that up later on. But yeah, so like let's say I wanted to make a Facebook post. So I can click on this, and this is the exact size that a Facebook post needs to be, right? That's the whole point of a preset. Well, let's look at the print presets, and let's see what we've got here. So here in the print presets, notice everything is in points. I have a letter size page. I have something called an A4. Now that is, for those of you who grew up in metric areas, that is a metric size. We have got things like a legal size piece of paper, a tabloid size piece of paper. We'll talk about those later on, and so on and so forth. Now, I could select one of these presets, and it will automatically adjust this right column to match those numbers. So if you look underneath here, mine currently says a letter size page should be 612 by 792 points. That's really 8.5 by 11 inches, right? If I click on that preset over here on the right-hand side, you'll notice it's telling me, okay, it's going to set my width to 612 and my height to 792. But what if I don't want to use points? What if I'm like, I have no idea what this point system is. This seems weird. It's different. I don't like different. I want to change. Well, if you'll notice, there's a drop down here that says points. So go ahead and click on that. And you can change it to any number of units of measurement. While we are going to stick with inches, points, and picas in this class, note Illustrator supports a ton of different units. Does everybody see that? So go ahead and choose inches. Sure enough, just as we suspected, it converted those points right to inches. Now, I'll come back, I'll explain how these units of measurement work here in just a minute, but I just want to kind of go through this setup real quick. Now, orientation. Does anybody know what these two orientation types are called? Portrait and landscape. Absolutely right. So portrait is more vertical than horizontal, and landscape is more horizontal than vertical. It's one way to look at it, right? It's not the technical definition, but it's a good way of looking at it. So right now it's blue. That means that right now my page, when I set this up, is going to be set up as a portrait-oriented document. Next is an artboard. Now, we're going to talk about artboards more in depth later on. But Illustrator is a fantastic program, and one of the features that Illustrator allows us to do, when I set up this document, it doesn't just set up one document and one page. I can actually create an Illustrator file that has different artboards of different sizes. Why would I want to do that? Well, let's say I am creating a campaign, a marketing campaign for my client, and I'm creating business cards and postcards and letterhead and maybe a Facebook post and all sorts of different things. Instead of creating a file for every single one of those pieces of collateral, I could create one Illustrator file for the client's marketing, and I can create artboards of each of those individual sizes all in one document. So think of an Illustrator file as kind of a collection of artboards. When we create this, we'll have one artboard that's 8.5 by 11 inches. But I can go in and I can create as many as I want, of any size that I want, which can be very helpful later on. Okay, So, got that. We'll talk a little bit more about bleed at a later date. We'll also start talking about color at a later date, but make sure yours is currently set to CMYK. Just to see if anybody knows, what does CMYK stand for? Anyone? Yes. Anybody know what K is? Black. Because black starts with K. We'll talk about this a little bit later on. It is cyan, magenta, yellow, and black. The K actually stands, depending on who you talk to, the K actually stands for the key color, and black is the key color. Okay, we'll talk about this when we discuss CMYK later on. So, there you go. Good. We're going to go ahead and leave everything else as the default, and we're going to go ahead and create this new document. So, make sure everything is kind of set up here for 8.5 by 11 inches, and go ahead and click on Create, please. And here we go. We have our first document. Congratulations, y'all are illustrators. Yeah, go forth, make lots of money. So here's the thing. Look at the document. Look at the space that we have here. We have a defined area that we have actually created that's 8.5 by 11 inches that is currently has a white background. Does everybody see that? And around it is what we call the pasteboard area. And it's kind of a gray space. I can put whatever I want in the pasteboard area and it won't print. Why? Because it's not part of my actual artboard. Okay? The pasteboard area is a really good place if you're trying to, like, maybe you have a couple different pieces of text and you have different fonts and you're trying to figure out what's best. It's a good place to kind of put some ideas or some different kind of concepts or whatever it is. And then you can kind of move them to the artboard when you actually want to build out your actual design. Notice in the top left-hand corner, it does actually say that this is artboard number 1. Does everyone see that? It's not page 1, it's artboard number 1. Okay, Illustrator does not work with pages. So it's not like starting a Microsoft Word document. Maybe I shouldn't assume. Has everybody here written a paper before in Microsoft Word or Google Docs? Yeah, everyone done that before? Okay. You know, you can just add more pages. And so you have like a 10-page document or a 5-page document. And, you know, if your English teacher tells you have to write a 10-page essay, you hate them. And, you know what I mean, right? So you're creating multiple pages. Illustrator doesn't work that way. We're not creating pages. We're just create additional artboards if we need them. Okay? Questions so far? Yes?
Mine doesn't show the artboard thing at the top.
Oh, that's fine. Don't worry about it. Okay. Any other questions? All right. So let's talk a little bit about the interface that we have here inside of Illustrator. So first off, on the left-hand side, this is your toolbar. Okay. Now, how many of you have used, who haven't used Illustrator, how many of you have used a imaging editing app or Adobe app before, something else like on an iPad? Any Procreate people in here? Some people like that? Okay. So you should be familiar somewhat with a toolbar in those applications, right? Same thing goes here with Illustrator. For those of you, this is the first time you've ever opened up an application like this before, your toolbar is exactly as it sounds like. This is the place where you're going to find all the tools necessary for you to create, modify, update, do anything that you want to your document. Now, as you go down this and as you move your mouse over this, one of the things that will pop up are these new little movies. These are like, they call these tooltips. And so this is supposed to like tell you, well, this is the selection tool. Here's what the selection tool is for. And as you kind of move down here, it can kind of show you some hints as far as what some of these tools could actually be. Now, that's great when you're first using this program and you're like, I don't remember which icon is which tool. But later on in the semester, I guarantee you at some point in time, those little tooltips are going to drive you batty because they're always on by default. So if you want to turn those off in the future, or if you want to make any adjustments to how Illustrator is kind of set up by default, you could do that in the preferences. So on the Mac, on the PC, it's a little different. I think it's under the window menu in PC. But on the Mac, if you go to the menu item that says Illustrator, the name of the application, there's a settings option in here. And I think it's under user interface. I think that's what it is. Or maybe not. Maybe it's under general. It's one of these two. Show tooltips. Yep, it is under general. So see that little checkbox right there? It says show tooltips and show rich tooltips. The rich tooltips are the little videos. The tooltips are just a little piece of text that just tells you the name of the tool. I usually leave that one on, but the show rich tooltips, if you ever want to turn it off, just uncheck that. So again, to find that, just come up here to Illustrator, go to settings, go to general, and you'll find that right here. You can turn that off if you want. Okay? Questions about that? I'm going to leave them on today. It's going to drive me nuts, so just bear with me if I get a little frustrated. Any questions? Good to move on? Okay. All right. Excellent. So those are the tools, and you'll see there's a lot of tools here, right? There's a lot of different things that I can actually click on. And in this latest version of Illustrator, they've tried to like create sections to try to explain like these are your drawing tools, these are your shape tools, and that's fine. I don't have a problem with that. But down here at the bottom, I do want to point out a couple of things. There's a no, go away. See right there, I should have just turned them off. But there are some additional sections down here that allow us to play with color, and we're going to get to that in just a minute. But then there's also these three little dots. So everybody see these three little dots at the very bottom, right here? This allows me to edit my toolbar. So let's say that there are some tools that you really don't need, or some tools that you do really want that aren't currently showing up in the toolbar. If you click on those, this will actually show you every single possible tool, and you can drag and move things around in your actual toolbar. Okay? So if you want to do that at home, be my guest. The nice thing about the computers in here, as long as you are using your TCC login, it will remember whatever changes you made to your toolbar. So you can customize this however you want. Questions about that? Okay. All right. Let's come over here to the right side. So if you notice over here on the right side, I've got some tabs right up here, and then I've got some additional information. So these are your various palettes. You can get to different windows and palettes by going up to the window menu, and you can kind of see that as we kind of go through here, there's a lot of different windows that allow you to do a lot of different things. For instance, when we're dealing with type, like I've got a whole slew of windows that I can open up that allow me to control just type. And that's really what these things are for. These different windows over here, these palettes, allow us to actually modify or control or fine-tune something. So when I create, say, a circle, right, and maybe I want to change the size of that circle or where it's positioned, I can come over here to this, and I have tools to be able to do that. When I'm typing text, there are specific windows that maybe want to change the font that I'm using or the size that I'm using, or do I want it to be center aligned or right aligned or any number of things. There's a window for me to be able to open that up and be able to fine tune those things. And I can keep these windows open anywhere on the page. For instance, this layer, I can move this tab. If I just drag this tab, I can have this window kind of wherever I want it, whatever makes sense. Or I can bring it back over here and kind of dock it. It works very similar to tabs on, like, say, a browser. Is everyone familiar with using tabs on a browser? Okay. Same kind of functionality. Questions about that? And we'll talk more about the properties panel here in just a little bit. Nope. Okay. All right. Great. All right. Last thing I want to show, and then we're going to start actually creating some things. If you'll notice, this interface doesn't really tell me much about, like, if my mouse is right here, I don't know how far across the page is my arrow. In other words, am I 5 inches? Am I at 6 inches? Where am I? Right? Am I 2 inches down from the top of the page? Am I 3 inches down from the top of the page? A lot of these drawing programs that I'm sure many of you have used usually have a set of rulers at the top and the bottom, kind of let you know where you are in space. By default, Illustrator, while it has rulers, it's hidden by default. So I want to show you how to actually activate those because they're very, very important. So go up to the View menu. And it's a big menu. There's a lot of things that are going on here. Scroll all the way down about 2/3 of the way. And there's a section that says Rulers. And go ahead and click Show Rulers. Now notice, off to the right-hand side, does everybody see what looks like a weird tic-tac-toe board and the letter R? Okay. For you Windows people, I want you to take a look at the keyboard for a second. First off, these are hotkeys. Do we have any people in here that like keyboard shortcuts? Okay. If you are not a keyboard shortcut fanatic, might I suggest you become one this semester? They will unbelievably speed up your productivity. Okay? So, here's the thing. Anytime you click on any menu item, or sometimes when you use a tooltip on a tool, you will see a letter and possibly some modification keys. That is the keyboard shortcut to either activate that tool or turn on or turn off a specific setting. So in this case, if you look down on your keyboard, next to the space bar, either to the left or to the right, you will see that same little tic-tac-toe icon. It's called the Command key. So this keyboard shortcut uses a modifier key, Command, plus the letter R. Of course, I can just simply click on that setting. That's fine, I can do that. But if I want to turn on or off, I can use the modifier key Command plus the R key. And that will turn on or off the rulers. Okay? The other modifiers on your keyboard, unfortunately, they do not have the same little icons on them. The Option and the Control. Just to kind of show you what those are. If I were to go, this modifier right here, this is the Option modifier plus the Command plus the letter G. The Control is usually a chevron, just like a little top hat. Not the up arrow. The up arrow is Shift, so that's Shift Command D. But Control, let's see if I can find one that is using Control. Sometimes they're pretty buried. I can't find one. It's what we call a chevron. I'll find one later. Notice this one right here. It says Package. Check out those modifiers. So it's Option, Shift, Command, and P. Now, I'm not expecting you to memorize these things. Okay? I'm not going to quiz you on them. All I'm saying is that if you find yourself constantly using the same tool over and over again, and you're constantly moving over to the toolbar to select that tool over and over again, figure out what the shortcut key is for it. It'll save you a lot of time. When you're doing little things like, I need to make sure I have the ruler, always just memorize those shortcuts for the things that you use the most. Okay. Questions about that? Okay, I know this is pretty basic stuff for some of you, but just want to make sure we go through it so everyone's on the same footing. Okay, good. One thing I do want to point out is this. Watch my screen. Notice everything disappeared. Yes, that's usually, the reaction is usually, what happened? My tools are gone, my palettes are gone, everything is gone. What is going on? Well, now they're back. Now they're gone. Now they're back. Let's do that on your computer. Locate the Tab key. Press it one time, please. Just press Tab. Notice everything's gone. To get it back, press Tab again. Do that a couple of times and let that sink in, because inevitably this will happen to you because you're typing so quick or you're doing something and you accidentally hit the Tab key. and then you panic, right? So I want to make sure that everybody here knows how to get how to get your palettes and your toolbars back when they suddenly disappear on you. Any questions about that? All right, good.
I'm assuming it's happened before.
Oh, it happens every semester. It'll happen to somebody here. I guarantee it. It'll be like I point it out now. 5 weeks from now, you all totally forgot about it, and then somebody will be like, I can't find anything. My tools are completely gone. Hit tab. Oh, there they are. It's okay. It's fine. It happens to everybody. It happens to me. Sometimes I'm typing very furiously. And do we have any hunt and peckers in here? You know, you type like this. No one. Everyone's just a really traditional typist in here.
Yeah, but
That's good. That's fine.
yeah.
But sometimes, you could be typing real quick, or you could be looking at something and you're typing and you accidentally hit that tab key. And then you look up and everything is gone and you panic for a second until you realize what you just did. Right? So it happens. It happens quite frequently. So don't worry about it. All right. Good. Any other questions?
Can I get your book?
Yes. What is it? Oh,
So,
it's giving you a problem.
yeah. I don't know why, but
Is it saying Azure password?
no, I sign in and then it goes straight back to this page. Like I can't get into my computer. And I don't know why.
Try to type in your password. Ooh, that's why. It says you're locked out.
Well, it had me locked out and then it let me back in. And
And
then
it'll
it
lock you out. Okay. Let's do this. So, oof, what is that?
Are we supposed to see the lights flicker?
Yep. Alright, I'm gonna log you in just to the basic account, so you can use that one for now. Alright. Yeah, they changed all the LEDs in some of these classrooms, and yeah, been having problems. So, by the way, if anybody does have any susceptibility to the flicker rate of these LEDs, I do. I have headaches after I've been in these classrooms for a couple of hours. If you need to step outside, I totally understand. Okay? All right, any other questions before we move on? Nope. Okay. Make sure we're in the right place here. All right. Let's go ahead and create some things. So, in your toolbar over here on the left-hand side, let's find the shapes. So you'll notice that I have a couple of shapes here. And the one that I want is the rectangle tool, which looks like this one right here. Now notice with that little tooltip that popped up, it tells me that the rectangle tool is actually, if I want to activate it, it's the keyboard shortcut, just the letter M, because M stands for rectangle. Okay? Or I can just simply click on that. Now, when I click on that, my mouse now turns into a little crosshair. Does everybody see that? All right, here's what I want everybody to do. I want you to click and drag the mouse to draw a rectangle. So we're going to click and hold the mouse key down and drag. And you should be able to create a rectangle. I don't care what the size is, just create a rectangle. Everybody got it? All right. See, that wasn't too hard, was it? Now, notice this rectangle has some extra stuff to it. For instance, see these little squares on either side? You got one on either corner, and you have one in the middle of every single side. Does everybody see that? If you move your mouse over any of these, it allows me to adjust the rectangle. So I can make the rectangle longer, I can make it taller, I can make it shorter, and I can use the ones on the end to adjust it however I want, like that. Everyone with me so far? All right, so I can adjust the size freehand by moving any of these points. However, with that rectangle currently selected, come back over here to your palettes, specifically the properties palette, and take a look at what we have now. Notice that up at the top it says rectangle. Does anybody say document? Everyone says rectangle? Okay. So that tells me what I currently have selected in my artboard. My rectangle is currently selected. So these are all the properties of that specific rectangle. So what do I have? Well, look at I have an X and a Y value, and then I have a W and an H value. Well, let's start with W and H. What does W and H stand for? Any guesses? Width and height, right? So if you look at this, the width of my rectangle is 5.4477 inches. And the height is 1.6665 inches. Well, what if I wanted a rectangle that was exactly 5.5 inches wide and 1.5 inches in height? If I were to take my mouse and I were to try to hit those values exactly right here, I'm going to have to be very good with the mouse. Can we all agree? So here's what I suggest. If you are trying to hit a specific size of a shape that already exists, come over here to the properties panel and let's just change the values. So I'm going to select the width and I'm going to type 5.5. Now notice all the other measurements have the abbreviation for inch on it. Does everybody see that? Now, here's the thing. When I created this document, remember, we changed the unit of measurement to inches. So every number that you type that is a measurement, it will default to inches because that's what we set the document up for. So I don't have to actually put the IN. You can if you want, but I don't have to. So that's going to be 5 inches. I'll hit tab to go to the height, and I'm going to make that 1.5. And when I've done that, I now have a rectangle that's exactly 5.5 inches by 1.5 inches. Does everybody see that? Questions about that so far? Nope. All right. Next, let's create another rectangle, except this time, here's what I want you to do. Move your mouse somewhere else over your artboard, and I want you just to single click one time. Single click. You should get this little window. Does everybody get the window? All right, so now, let's say I want to create a rectangle that's actually 3 inches by 2 inches. Instead of dragging it out, trying to get as close as I possibly can to 3 inches by 2 inches, and then having to go over to the properties panel and then readjust it, if you click one time, Illustrator will allow you to go ahead and just specify, well, what size rectangle do you want us to create? Well, I want one that's 3 inches by 2 inches. Well, not 21, 2 inches, and click OK. There it is. There's my rectangle. Pretty straightforward, right? Let's do a third one, except this time we're going to put a modifier. So we're going to create this one like we did the first one. We're going to click and drag a rectangle, except this time when we're dragging the mouse, we're going to hold on to the shift key on the keyboard. Here's what this will do. This, by holding down the shift key, it will constrain the width and the height to the same value. So what this will essentially allow us to do, instead of creating a rectangle like this, if you hold the shift key down, it will allow you to create a perfect square of any size. So hold down the shift key as you click and drag, and we will create a square. Questions so far? We okay with creating shapes? Pretty straightforward, right? Okay. Now, I'm going to bring up a subject, and I apologize ahead of time if this gives anybody nightmares tonight. Let's talk about geometry. Boy, that got some funny looks. Bless you. Bless you.
Sorry, geometry makes me sneeze.
Yeah, it's okay. So, how many people here remember geometry class? I didn't say fondly. I just said, did you remember it? Okay. So, here's what I want to do. I have this rectangle the square. I have a square, right? I have the square selected. I'm going to move my properties panel over here just so we can kind of see what's going on. So I can zoom in. You can see both at the same time. All right. Now, in geometry class, how many of you remember plotting points on a graph or on a two-dimensional plane? No? Do you remember the X and Y coordinates? Okay, or the X and Y axis. You guys remember this? So you had something that looks like this, right? And in the center where the X and the Y meet, that's 0, 0. Remember the point of origin. Does everybody remember this? Okay. So let's take a look at the properties panel. And look, next to the width and the height is an X and a Y. Does everybody see that? All right. That is this square's current position on the artboard. It is currently positioned at, in my case, 3.4583 inches on the X and 3.9167 inches on the Y. Now, great. What does that mean? First off, let's decipher what X and Y is really quick. See if you remember. What is the x-axis? Is it the horizontal or is it the vertical? Horizontal. So, as I move this square horizontally, it's going to change the x position. Agreed? So then that means the y is vertical. Exactly. So as I move this up or down, it's going to change the y position. All right. Anyone confused by that? Are we okay? All right. Good. So, there's one other thing, though, that we have to consider when we position elements on the page using their x and y coordinate. Now, you may be wondering, why do I even need to know this? I just kind of place things. Because a lot of the times when you're using things in Illustrator, you want things to line up precisely. Or if you're using Illustrator for things like digital fabrication, CNC work, laser work, right? Vinyl cutting, if you ever want to get into like vinyl wraps on cars and stuff like that. Sometimes you have to make sure that certain shapes show up in very specific spots so that they line up with real world things. So we want to be precise about where certain objects need to go. But the one consideration that we need to really be aware of is the fact that when we position an element, an object, a shape, whatever it is on the stage, or the artboard, excuse me. Just reverted back to animation when I said stage. Sorry about that. When we are positioning something on the artboard, there are 9 ways to position it. Let me explain. Look to the left of the X and Y in the properties panel. Do you see that weird looking tic-tac-toe board? Does everybody see this? Right here? Okay, if you move your mouse over it, you're going to get something that says set the reference point. Does everybody notice how mine currently has the center square selected? Okay. When you are positioning something on the artboard, Illustrator needs to know what part of that object or shape is being positioned. In my case, what is currently sitting at 4.1806 inches on the X and 3.6357 inches on the Y is the center of my square. You see how the reference point is currently selected in the center. That means when I'm using this X and Y coordinate, I am positioning the center of the square to be at that position. Questions about that? All right, so what are the other things that we can position? Well, you can position the left edge, the right edge, the top edge, the bottom edge, or any of the four corners. And notice, as I click and change the reference point, so does the X and Y coordinate to match. So for instance, if I wanted this square to be lined up here in the top left-hand corner of my page, well, if I look up here at the ruler, look at this. This is my X ruler. The top left-hand corner is at 0. Does everybody see that? And if I come all the way over here, the top left-hand corner on the Y is also at 0. So if I want my square to line up right here in the top left-hand corner, if I put the center of my square as the reference point and I change the X and Y to 0, 0, look what ends up happening. That's not right, right? That's not what I wanted. But notice how it put the center of my square there. So what I need to do is I need to come up here and I need to change my reference point. Let me close this. This is really annoying. I need to change the reference point to the top left-hand corner. So I need to click on that reference point there, and then I can zero it out. And then I have it right there in the top left-hand corner. Do you see how that works? Questions about that? Nope. Do we feel okay about that? Does that bring back some memories? Good or bad? All right. Now, seriously, understanding just these four properties when you're creating a shape is some of the most important aspects of creating and recreating some very specific work. I use that all the time, whether I'm doing my own illustration work or whether I'm doing digital production work in Illustrator. I use it a lot. So getting used to how X and Y coordinates and reference points work is very, very important. Now, there is one other thing that I want to show you about these boxes. How many of you like to do math? 1, 2, say 2.5 people in here like to do math. Okay, not a problem. Let me show you something very neat about Adobe products. This works in any Adobe product. It could be Photoshop, it could be Illustrator, it could be InDesign. Let's say for a moment that I have got my little square here at the X coordinate is 1.25 inches. But I've just checked with my client and they want that square moved over another 1/2 inch. Everyone with me so far? Okay. Now, you could do the math, right? I mean, this is not difficult math to do. But just imagine for a moment that my example is something a little bit more difficult, like a weird measurement that I need to move in. And you could sit here with a pencil and some paper and sit here and try to do math and add it up and try to figure out where it needs to be positioned. But wouldn't it be better if you just tell Illustrator to do it for you? Would that be neat? Let me show you something really cool about this. So check this out. Let's say I want to move this over an extra 1/2 inch. Okay? I'm going to hit plus 0.5. Or let's say I need to subtract 1/8 of an inch, which is minus 0.125. Maybe I need to double that value. How would I double that value using math? Multiply it by 2. Check this out. Asterisk 2 times 2. Boop. Multiplied it by 2. All right, what about dividing it? Maybe I need to divide it by 1/3. Divide by 3. There you go. It does math for you.
Hey.
Isn't that neat? So imagine now, let's say I wanted to create this square. Let's say this square is 1 inches by 1 inches. Okay, and it's going to be at the 1 inch mark, right? If I wanted to, I could create another square. I could duplicate this, copy, paste it, whatever I want to. And if I need to double it, I just multiply the width and the height by 2. If I need to multiply it again, or maybe make it, 25% bigger, we'll multiply it by 25%. There's any number of things that you can do with the math. And the neat thing about this is that it will understand and will convert any unit of measurement. So right now we're working in inches, but later on when we start working in points and picas, if you need to move something over 1 inch, but you're working in picas, you could just say plus 1 inch. That's when you'd want to use the abbreviation. And it will convert that automatically to whatever unit you're using and add to that number. I know that seems really esoteric right now since we haven't used it, but this will come in handy a little bit later on. So the big takeaway from this is that Adobe measurements can support simple math functions. Addition, subtraction, multiplication. Okay? Did I say division? And division. So addition, subtraction, multiplication, and division. Questions about that? Nope. We okay? All right. Now, great. With that being said, and with our boxes moved over here, come over here and let's grab what's called the selection tool, which is this black arrow up here at the top. It's just the selection tool. The letter V on the keyboard will do that. And let's select one of the other rectangles that we have created. And it doesn't matter which one it is. So the selection tool allows you to, as the word says, it allows you to select an object or shape that's actually on your artboard. Okay. Additionally, it allows you to actually move it around too. So I can drag around, do whatever I want. This is where I can grab these handles, these little boxes. I can make adjustments, whatever I want. That's the selection tool. Now, next thing I want to point out, one of the things I did not mention, does everybody see these little bullseye targets that are in the corners? All right, move your mouse over that and you'll notice in the bottom right-hand corner of your arrow, you get what looks like a curve. Click and drag that towards the center of your rectangle. Ooh. Does everybody see that? Rounded corners made easy. They added that feature several years ago, and it was like, where have you been all my life? Okay? So you can adjust these any way you want. Now, in this case, does everybody see what the R is? See where it says that R value? Okay? Anytime you go to change a measurement, you'll usually get a box like this that pops up that will try to help you with this. Does anybody know what R stands for in this case? Radius. That's actually the radius of that particular curve. To which several of you are like, what's a radius? I'll let you Google that later. Okay? So, that's the radius. Now, the other thing is that just because I have that here, there is another box over here in my properties panel. See the little 3 dots? 3 dots always means there's more there. So if I click these 3 dots under transform, I have the ability to adjust those 4 corners. But here's the neat thing. See this little link, this little chain right here in the middle? With that selected, all 4 corners will be exactly the same. If I uncheck that, I can change any of these corners to a completely different radius. So in this case now, I have 2 corners that are not radii and 2 that are. See how that works? So you do have additional control. Usually if you go over to properties, you can play around with it and really fine tune your shapes. Any questions? All right, next thing. With this rectangle selected, instead of moving over the bullseye to change the radius of the corners or moving your mouse over any of these handles, I want you to come up to one of the corners. Go to one of the handles on the corners, and I want you to move the mouse outside of that, just outside of it, to where it turns into this kind of arched arrow. Does everybody see that? All right, here's what I want you to do. When you have the arrow like this, these little double-sided arched arrows, I want you to click and drag the mouse. And you'll notice what's happening here. What are we doing? Rotating. Okay? And notice it's telling me how many degrees I'm actually rotating this. Okay? That's pretty important. But again, just like with resizing using these handles, it's not very precise, is it? So where can I go to be precise? Well, the properties panel. And here is the angle right here. So if I wanted this to be exactly 12 degrees, I can make that exactly 12 degrees. However, keep this in mind. When you are rotating a shape, it is rotating around the reference point. So right now, look what's my reference point. It's the top left-hand corner. So it's rotating around this. This is my pivot point, not the center of my shape. Okay? So you have to be aware of what your reference point is when you actually rotate. You all right? Okay. All right. So there's rotation, right? X and Y coordinate, width and height. Everything's good there. Last thing I want to show you, and then we'll take a quick break. Fill and stroke. So if we come down here in the properties panel, you'll notice there's a section that says appearance. And there's two things here, a fill and a stroke. There's actually three, opacity. What does opacity mean? Yeah, so transparency and opacity, two different words, but kind of like two sides of the same coin, right? So opaqueness is how solid something looks. Transparent is how transparent something looks. So in this case, when we say opacity is 100%, I'm saying that this is a solid shape, right? So if I were to put something behind it, you couldn't see whatever I put behind it. It's solid. If it's zero opacity, that means it's fully transparent, right? It's ghost. But what I want to focus on is the fill and the stroke. And if you notice, these boxes look a little different. The fill box is just a giant white square at the moment. Does everybody see that? Click on the white square, please. And what you'll get is a box that looks something like this. Does everybody get that? Okay. I want you to click on any color down here. Doesn't matter what it is. I'm going to choose this orange. Do you notice now that the shape has been filled with that color? It is a solid color. Now you can choose other things here, and we can talk about different kinds of patterns and stuff later on. But I am filling the inside of that shape with a color. Okay, that's what a fill is. So what do you think a stroke is? I'm not talking in medical terms. What's a stroke? Yeah, the outside of the actual shape. Okay, so in my case, this outside shape, I can also apply what's called a stroke to it. Okay, so come back over here and let's click on stroke. And I'm going to choose a completely different color. I'm going to go crazy here and choose like a magenta. That looks good. But if you'll notice, it's really hard to see. It's there. You can kind of see the faint magenta. It's there. But you'll notice to the right of the stroke, there's another option. And that is how thick or what the weight of the stroke is going to be. And in this case, it's only a 1-point stroke, which is really, really thin. So I'm going to click on this drop down. I'm going to choose something big like 10 points. And you can really begin to see just how big that stroke is. Does everybody see how that stroke works? Now later on, we'll start to work with these a little bit more, and there's a whole nother set of options dealing with strokes. So for instance, I could create a solid line stroke like I have here. Maybe I want a dashed line. Maybe I'm doing an ad for a client and they have a coupon. Has everybody seen those coupons? They have like dashed lines for you to use a pair of scissors with and cut out. Okay. Or maybe I'm doing a book for a client that has a tear out piece where somebody has perforated edges and they have to pull out the piece and they have to fold it together to make something, right? So there may be some dashed lines or dotted lines or some other types of stroke that I need to be able to represent. Well, there's a whole slew of options here that allow you to actually create strokes to do all sorts of things. And we'll talk about those a little bit later on in the class. Okay, any questions about fills or strokes? All right. The other place that you can find fills and strokes is actually in the toolbar. So if you come over here in the toolbar, if you look down here at the bottom, this is also the fill and the stroke. Does everybody see that? So right now I have the fill selected. If I click on this, notice the stroke goes before it. So now I'm selecting the stroke. So this is the fill and that's the stroke. If I want to reset the fill and the stroke of the object to white and black, you can click on this icon right here. If I want to swap the colors, maybe I want the stroke to be this teal color and I want the fill to be the magenta. Watch what happens. I'm going to click this little double arrow right here. There we go. So this little double arrow right there, that'll swap them. Okay, that'll work. Or if I select the fill, notice this little line, this red line. Remember when you guys were doing your phonograms and we were talking about none or no, and all of you pretty much had the exact same idea for that, which was like a circle with a slash through it? Remember that? Okay, that's what that means. So that little square with the little red slash through it means no color or no fill, no stroke. So if I have the fill selected right here and I click on that, I don't have a fill. Okay? The fill is gone. It's not solid anymore. Questions? Are we okay? All right. So grab one of the other shapes and change the fill and the stroke to something different. You choose whatever you want to do. Excuse me. Ugh, apparently I'm allergic to fills and strokes. Change the fill and stroke to something else. Doesn't matter what it is. Something different. All right. So with that being done, the next thing that I want you to do is grab that new shape and I want you to place it on top of the other shape. Or it might be behind it, depending on where you drop it. All right, once you have done that, let's take a 5-minute break. Sound good? Okay, so take 5. By my watch, that would mean we come back at 5:57. I have no idea what that clock says over there. So 5 minutes for whatever that says. So take 5. Now that we have both shapes pretty much kind of like on top of each other, does everybody kind of notice that the my orange, I'm going to call this one orange and call this one teal. We okay with that designation? So notice that my orange one is sitting on top of the teal object, right? Even if I were to select the teal object and move it, it's still going to be behind the orange. Okay, this is what we call stacking order. Now, to see this a little bit more visually, what we need to do is we need to open up the layers panel. So go to the window menu here at the top of the window, click on Window, and come down and find the one that says Layers. And go ahead and select Layers. Did everybody find it? All right. So, in my layers, so I'll bring layers over here so we can kind of see it. Does everybody see that I have one that currently says Layer 1? Okay. Now, inside of Layer 1 are all of these shapes that I've been creating. When you first create an Illustrator file, it will automatically create a single layer called Layer 1. Every Illustrator file has to have at least one layer. Okay, so if you'll notice, if I select this layer, see how there's like a trash can icon down here? And I can't delete that layer. Does everybody see that? So I can't do it, can't delete it. Okay, so if I click on the little arrow next to my layer, look what happens. I actually have 3 sublayers. So each of these sublayers has one of my shapes. So this is that rectangle that's up here. Here's my orange one, and then here is my teal one. Does everybody see that? Okay, so all of these shapes live in Layer 1. Now, layers, we're going to get deeper into layers a little bit later on. We can rename these layers, we can group these layers together, we can reorder these layers, we can do anything that we want. But the one thing that I want to point out today is that the order of my layers and the stacking order of my objects makes a big difference. If I want to make sure that I have an object or a shape up front and not being covered by something else, then sometimes I have to reorder the stacking order. I have to kind of shuffle them around. Imagine for a moment that I've got these 3 pieces of paper. Okay? I have these 3 pieces of paper. If I put all 3 of these pieces of paper together, you can only see one. Agreed? If I take this back bun and I kind of have it peek out just a little bit, you can see a little bit of it, but you're still seeing all of this first one. But if I reorder it, and I take that back one and I put it in the front, now you can fully see what was in the back in the front. Everyone see that one? And maybe I want to put this in between these 2. I can do it that way, so then that way you can kind of see a little bit of the back one, a little bit of the front one, a little bit of this one. I can reorder them in different ways, however I want to do it. This is called stacking order. So in this case, let's say I wanted to move my teal one to the front. I want to see it fully, and I only want to see a little bit of the bottom of my orange shape. So with your selection tool, go ahead and select the shape that's in the back that's being covered. And go up to the Object menu. And if you'll notice, there's several different options, but the one that I want is under Arrange. And if you notice, there are 4 different options there. I can bring it to the front. I can bring it forward 1 layer. I can send it backward 1 layer, or I can send it all the way to the back. Okay? So in our case, let's bring it to the front. So select Bring It to the Front. And there you go. Now also notice in my layers, that moved my sublayer. So everybody see how now the teal went from the very bottom-most sublayer and it's now up at the top. So guess what? I can also do this by reordering my sublayers. So if I wanted to drag one up or behind it, I can reorder my sublayers as well. You can drag and drop. So you can go to Object, Arrange, and whatever is selected, you can move it forward, back, to the front, to the back, or you can reorder your sublayers by simply just dragging and dropping. Any questions about that? Okay. All right. Last 2 things. We've been using the transform tool to move things around, resize things, rotate them, right? Add rounded corners, all sorts of wonderful things. But what if I want to transform a shape in a different way? So here's what we're going to do. Come over here to your toolbar and notice there are actually 2 arrows up at the top. There is a darker arrow, that's the selection tool, and an arrow that's white, that is called the direct select tool. So go ahead and select this white arrow or the direct select tool. With that selected, we're going to come back over here and I'm going to select, I'm going to move my mouse. If you have one of these things selected, just click elsewhere. Click somewhere else on the artboard to deselect something. And I want to move my mouse over one of the corners of one of the other shapes. So let's say this one right here. And you'll notice it's only highlighting one of the handles. Does everybody see that? So move your mouse over one of those corners and I want you to click and drag it. And look what it does. See how it kind of skews it out like that? Try it with a different one. Move your mouse over a different corner of a different shape and you can drag it. Isn't that neat? If you grab a side, you can move just a side. Up or down, left or right. If you do have a curve to something, you can select the handle and you can play around with these. We'll talk about Bezier curves later on. But there's a lot of different things that you can do with the direct select tool to transform a shape into something that is, well, to be honest with you, a little more organic. So the select tool, the black one, allows you to select whole shapes or objects, move them, resize them width or height, allow you to rotate them, allow you to do things like add rounded corners. The direct select tool, though, allows you to refine the shape by individual points, either in the corners or by adjusting an edge, right? Or adjusting a curve to something that you've added. That's what the direct select tool is. Okay, so think, select tools kind of like high-end, like just kind of generalized stuff that you could do, and the direct select tool is a little bit more specific. Any questions about that? So those are transformations that you can make. And finally, last but not least, let's talk about type. So in your toolbar, you will notice if you come on down here, there is an actual section that says type. And what we want to look for is this T right here, not this one, this one. Okay, we're not going to type inside of shapes today. We just want to add some type. So we're going to add the type tool. So grab this little T-bar tool that we have right here. And then I want to move my mouse over the artboard. And notice you have an I-bar. That's what that little weird shape is. Surrounded by a dotted line. Does everybody see that? Okay. A couple different ways that we can add text to Illustrator. We can click once and then type whatever we want. And that's fine if you're doing a couple of words here or there, or maybe a very short sentence. Or if you click and drag, you can create a text frame that'll allow you to have multiple lines of text. So in our case, just click one time. And I want you to add your name. Now notice, right off the bat, it automatically adds some text. Does anybody recognize that text? Or know what that is? Nobody's seen that before? First off, is that English? No, it is not, right? At least it's not any English that we've ever seen. That's actually Latin. Okay, it's called lorem ipsum. This is placeholder text, or what we would call in the industry Greeking. Okay, process of Greeking is basically this. Let's say you are doing a brochure for a client, but the client hasn't given you the content yet, right? They haven't given you the copy. Well, if you want to lay out your brochure to show the client what it's actually going to look like, instead of you sitting there and just like type in a bunch of gibberish like that, it's a lot easier to use Greeking or Latin, basically text that mimics English but is really just nonsensical. Like, it looks like English, it follows the right syntax and letters and everything else, but it's just a placeholder text. It's fake text. Nowadays, we typically are going to use like AI to do that. So if I'm doing a brochure for, like, say, a pizza parlor, And they were like, hey, we don't quite yet have the descriptions of all of our pizzas in yet. Well, instead of me using Greeking for that, I just go to AI and go, hey, give me a one paragraph description of a pepperoni pizza. And I just throw that in there until they gave me the real copy, then I'd swap that out. Does that make sense? So when you press the mouse key one time, you're going to get Greeking like this. Let's go ahead and change that. Put your name there. Now, in order for us to change that, I'm going to go ahead and highlight my name and go back over to the Properties panel. And you'll notice that there is a section now that says Character. And from here, I can change the different fonts that I'm using. So maybe I want to use something like, say, I don't know. I'm going to pick something different here. Not Futura. Let's do, well, that looks good. We'll use that one. Gastromon, that's fine. Maybe I want to change the size to something a little bit different. So there's 48 point font size. I'm using a different font. Okay. Now, when you are using text in Illustrator, I'm going to show you something interesting about this. So check this out. If I were to use my selection tool, remember the selection tool allows me to adjust width and height of any object that I have selected, right? Well, guess what? Text is an object. Check this out. Do you see the handles that are showing up around my text? Look at this. That doesn't look so good, does it? I can't see anything now. Here's what I want you to do. I want you to seriously mess up your text. Grab your selection tool and seriously mess it up. Where you can't read it anymore. Or it just looks really bad. All right. The last thing I'm going to show you today is going to be the one thing that will save your bacon. That is the undo. How many of you are familiar with the concept of undo in other applications? There's an undo in Illustrator as well. And it's the same keystroke. Command Z. So you can either go up to Edit, Undo, or Command Z. And I can hit Command Z however many times, and it'll keep undoing the last previous change. As I keep going, I can go all the way back to a blank page if I wanted to.
I am so used to Control Z. I've been trying that the entire time.
Sorry, yeah, Command Z. So the thing is, if you are a Windows user, two things. Number one, Control on a window is Command on a Mac. Everything else will work exactly the same with keyboard strokes. Also, if you are used to Windows, when you're on a Mac, think opposite. What I mean by that is that usually on a Windows machine, all of your main icons, your trash, your hard drive icons are usually on the left side of the screen. On the Mac, they're on the right side of the screen. Okay? Your system controls and preferences are usually at the bottom of the screen. On the Mac, they're at the top of the screen. So just think opposite, and just know that Control is Command. And you should be good to go. Okay? Any questions about this? All right, so, sorry, that took a lot longer than I thought, but let's do this. I'm going to give you assignment 2. This is not going to be due until end of class on Tuesday. We'll have some time to work on this in class, a lot of time to work on this in class. So here's what I want you to do. Go to Canvas real quick. Let's talk about assignment 2 and what it is that you're going to do. You are going to create your first illustration with assignment 2. It is going to be a robot. How many people here like robots? Anybody like robots? 3.5 people like robots. Okay. I just love all the halves. All right, 3.5, 4.5, great. So you're going to create your own robot. So if you click on assignment 2 here, you will see my assignment sheet. So typically, this is how assignment sheet's going to look in class from here on out. For assignment 1, which I'll take up by the end of class, and I think I'm just going to push that because we had some people out today. I'm going to push that due date to Tuesday morning, or Tuesday beginning of class, not Tuesday morning, sorry. So if you don't have assignment 1, forgot assignment 1, whatever it is, just bring it back to me at the beginning of class on Tuesday. If you already have it ready to go, drop it off before you leave today. But on assignment 1, you had an assignment sheet, right? You printed it out, you did your work, you're turning that in. Most of the time, this is how you're going to do assignments for me in this class. So real quick, how this is going to look is up at the top, I explain how you're going to turn things in. So for this one, you are going to print a copy of your final robot. We have all these printers in the back. On Tuesday, I'm going to show you how to print. Okay? You are then going to save your Illustrator file and you're going to upload it to Canvas. Well, how do you do that? Well, when you're here at the assignment, you're going to click on this giant blue Start Assignment button. And when you do that, it's going to ask you to select your file to upload. All I need is the .ai file that you save from Illustrator. .ai is the extension that Illustrator uses. Stands for Adobe Illustrator. Okay? Pretty straightforward there. All right, so then I give you a little bit of an overview. This is basically kind of like, what are some of the things that this assignment actually entails? What is it that you're expected to do? So in this case, you are going to use the shapes that we have learned. And by the way, it doesn't have to just be rectangles, it could also be circles. Well, to do circles, you're going to use what's called the ellipse tool, which is this one right here. And it works exactly the same, right? I can draw circles. I can hold the shift key down and actually draw a circle, or I can draw ovals or whatever it is that I want to do. Okay, pretty straightforward. But these are two examples of some robots that some previous students have done. This is a totally creative assignment, meaning I really don't care what your robot looks like. Okay? It doesn't have to look like any robot that actually currently exists. Okay, so I don't need like 15, R2-D2s or C-3POs, okay, or Robbie the Robots. It's a much older take for some of you in here, right? Don't need that. Don't need, all these different kinds of robots that are actually in movies and TV shows and stuff like that. Create one of your own, right? By that same token, I don't need everyone to do Optimus from Tesla, but still, point is, do your own robot. But here's what I want you to do. There is going to be a limitation on what you're able to do with this one. So under requirements, this is basically your assignment. These are your instructions. So it's going to say start here, and you're going to create a file that is 8.5 inches by 11 inches. So it's going to be a letter size page, right? And then it's going to tell you how to save your file. So your file name is going to be basic GD, which stands for basic graphic design, _, A2, that's the assignment, _ your last name. Please do not type YOURLASTNAME. Actually put your last name there, okay? Every now and then I get somebody who does that by accident. It's a copy paste thing, I understand, okay? Then, here are the restrictions. Number 1, you can only use the rectangle and the ellipse tools. That's it. So for those of you who have used Illustrator in the past, and you may be pros at the pen tool and some of the other tools that are out there, tough, can't use it. I just want rectangles and I just want ellipses. All right? Any shapes you create with the rectangle and the ellipse tools have to be either solid black or solid white. No colors. This is a black and white assignment. Okay? You can use the direct selection tool, which means you can transform any of those shapes that you want. That's fine, but they have to start off as a rectangle or an ellipse. You can use the rotation feature if you want. You can copy and paste, duplicate shapes, however you want to build your exact robot. The only other thing that you need to do before you're ready to go, I want you to grab the type tool and I want you to type your name on the artboard. Okay? The only thing is I want to make sure it's at least 24-point font size. Don't really care what the font is. You pick. Pick something neat. All right? Also, make sure that your name is at least 1/2 inch from the edge of the artboard. So I don't want it like flush to the edge, because when you go to print it, it'll cut it off. So have it at least 1/2 inch inside of the actual artboard. But be creative. Do whatever you want with your robot. Right? So you can kind of see that here. So how they did these joints real quick, that's a white circle on top of a black rectangle and then another black circle on top of the white circle. So they're just stacking shapes. Same thing with the eye, right? This is a black rectangle, that's a white rectangle, black rectangle, black rectangle, black rectangle, white circle, black circle, white circle, black circle. That's how they did that. Pretty straightforward, right? Any questions about this? Any questions at all? All right. Well, that's it. Thank you very much. If you do have your assignment one, I will take that up here before you take off. If anybody, did anybody sign in today?